Okay.
Obviously.
All
All right, start again. Thanks, everyone. Good to be here. I'll take that as read, objections, and we'll get straight into it. Here on the 7th of August, for the first briefing of the representation review process, we were asked to go away and come back with a little bit more information about one of the options. Presented 7 options, was interest in one of them. We've gone away and come back with a little bit more information all in the briefing review. Objective. So today's briefing is to give you an update on the process that is underway and determine the arrangements for the initial proposal. We're not resolving an initial proposal today. Hopefully we want to land on one option that council on the 4th of September as the initial proposal. Only one option can be resolved at that meeting, and the last legal date is the 13th of September. Bit of background, council have disestablished Māori wards, and under the legislation that means a shortened representation review is required. Quickly discuss what a review is. It's a review of the electoral arrangements, how many councillors there are, how they're elected, whether they're all elected from wards or at large or a mixture. If we do have wards, how many wards, what are the boundaries, how many councillors from each ward, what are their names. We also need to consider community boards, whether they need to be established, and if so, it's the same process. How many members per board, what are their names, what are their boundaries, whether any councillors are appointed to community boards. Status quo is 8 councillors through general wards, 1 councillor from one district-wide Māori ward, no community boards. Got the current arrangements there. Recapping the options that we presented at the first briefing, we went over 7 options, various numbers of councillors, and some had boundary changes, some didn't. Option 2, which is 8 councillors on the existing 3 general wards, or the 3 general ward boundaries, was sort of the preferred option. It does involve a minor boundary change, which I'll talk about in a bit. 8 councillors from 3 wards wouldn't be exactly compliant. So this option does involve moving about 110 people from the Wairoa ward into the Otumatea ward. This option did have some pretty strong interest, and we were asked to go away and provide a bit more information about the boundary area. Was the recommended option, but we have a few more to go over with you. So that area there is what we're proposing to move from the Wairoa ward into the Otumatea ward. I guess it's about 110 people, and that would ensure that all councillors are representing approximately the same number of people.
So that's basically what we're going to have at the next election now after last week. Is that right? With a few slight boundary changes?
Yeah, if this was to be the option that is resolved as the initial. There's a little bit more information there about the affected area. So really it follows the Manganui River in the north and then comes down toward that's Takataka Road.
I have a couple of questions. Thank you, the chair. One obviously is in the news. Will the representation not go ahead if the High Court judgment can state?
Well, it's not a process that we have any involvement with.
No, but I'm just asking because you've dealt with many. Dale can probably answer it. Can they stop it?
We still have to comply with legislation, which means we have to do an initial proposal by the 6th of September. So this process carries on irrespective of what may be happening elsewhere, but we will carry on and do our initial proposal on the 4th.
That's good. My question second is more on to options. So you have given many options. One of them is East and West is only 6 councillors. And I don't understand who has given you the option to move people from West to, like you have including Mangatroto and Paparoa in East from West.
Yeah.
Or who was suggested it?
Yeah, so we'll get to that option a little bit later. It's in a few slides.
I'm just asking. I mean, is it suggested by us or is it just?
No, that's us demonstrating where would the boundary be as an example.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Lambert.
The Mitatai Hoyle Road clan there, are they going to the Darwin ward or to the Ruai?
They're going into the Otamateo.
Okay,
Going to the light side, Gordy,
sorry?
going to the light side.
History is important to understand a little bit. So my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that that boundary perennially been moved?
Yes, every representation review, it seems to be, because it's so much on us there, they are targeted each rep review.
So the Badlands,
Yep.
Last two representation reviews, Dale, I think that boundary's moved.
Yeah, every time, yeah.
That community has suffered in some ways and they've been in and out of wards and different,
Correct.
that sort of stuff. So it's important context, I suppose.
Not stable, really,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, unstable.
Just the tail of a question, I forgot about that. The Otamatia, in this percentage, when you dissect it to 8, there's a plus 9% almost for Otamatia. Is it possible to have just 1 in Otamatia and 4 in Dargaville?
That actually was one of the options that we presented at the last workshop, and it was way out of compliance.
Okay, thank you.
We'll carry on.
Okay. So that is the recommended option. Now, we were also asked to look into how would it look if the Wairau ward was to be split into 2. At previous arrangements, history, there was 2 wards in this area. One was Dargaville and one was the rest of the, it's called the West Coast Central ward. If we were to revert that boundary back to where it was, it would be very difficult to keep that boundary in the exact same place. So currently we've got 3 councillors from that area. If you were to turn it into 2 wards, 1 Dargaville, 1 the rest, you'd have to decide which of those 2 wards has 1 councillor and which has 2. They both have reasonably similar population, and so the level of compliance doesn't really fit. This is where the boundary used to be. If we give Dargaville 2 councillors and West Coast 1 councillor, we're way out of compliance. I think West Coast Central is 75%. If we were to do it the other way around and give Dargaville 1 councillor and West Coast Central 2, we're still way out of compliance. So that boundary, where it was at the last review, wouldn't be suitable with 3 councillors from that area. This is where the boundary used to be, around Dargaville. So next question is, if we did wish to split the Wairau ward into 2, where would we have to put the boundary to make it compliant? And you have to extend the Dargaville area quite significantly. This is an example of where you could put it. It goes all the way to the coast. Includes parts of West Coast Central area probably aren't part of Dargaville, but this is just a demonstration where you'd have to move that boundary, make the population numbers fit. I'll leave it up to you to decide whether you think this is.
Councillor Vincent, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. Oh, well, more of a comment really, because to me, as an outsider, there is some logic to that, and I'd be interested in what the Dargaville councillors say, in that Bailey's Beach is a commuter base for people who work in Dargaville. So there is some community of interest there, I would have thought. But
And they're on the same water supply.
and water supply. Yeah,
That is another option that you can consider. There are also other places you could have this boundary, but what we're demonstrating is that you do need to significantly expand what would be the Dargaville ward. I think I've called it the greater Dargaville ward
To comply
area
with
to
your
comply with
plus- yeah.
minus 10%.
Just my view is that people work in Dargaville work in the other ward, other people live in the other ward and come into Dargaville to work. It's, I don't know, it's lottery really, isn't it? And it's a lottery, how should I put it, for the people who put themselves forward for election, it could be left with only 1 person running in 1 ward and 10 in the other, because
Yes.
yeah, it's
And
messy, really.
So in this case, you would have 2 councillors from that greater Dargaville ward area and 1 councillor. The rest of the Wairau ward area would guarantee that those rural areas are electing at least 1 councillor. But I suppose the important question is this a community of interest?
Would we need to have a referendum on whether or not we had a rural ward?
No.
I have one question again, on population. Sorry, I did a bit of reading. There's another presidential coming afterwards, had the population number at more than 28,000 for Kaipara. Same 2023, which you used. So what's the basis of your population number?
These are population estimates as of 30th of June 2023, which are based off the 2018 census, compiled by Statistics New Zealand. We don't have a choice about which data set.
We
So
cannot-
Stats NZ compile it.
You're probably getting confused with the latest 2023 census figures which have just come out, which we cannot use. Okay, because it doesn't come down to the mesh block levels which we need. So the directive from both legislation and the Local Government Commission is all councils in New Zealand must use the population estimates as of 30th of June 2023, which is what we've used.
Councillor Lambeth?
On that, you cannot use it, but can you look at it for future decisions? Because I say that is the Kaipara district has the largest growth of any other district in New Zealand. So our demographics are changing percentage wise more than everybody else's. That 4 years is quite critical.
For the mechanics of this, no, we must use these figures. For the mechanics,
But have you looked at the other ones?
have they come out by?
I've only seen national.
Yeah, it's only
Numbers.
aggregated.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the district ones haven't come out yet. That's
right. October, November, I think they said.
Yes, if I could, so
So what you're saying, and I really appreciate the conversation, the questions here today. Most of you, this is
first time you've done this, actually, so once you start scratching the surface, it can get quite complicated.
Yes.
And that's why it does take time to do this and to do it properly, so that's really good, thank you for the engagement. Councillor Lambeth, what you've just nailed is exactly the perennial problem that's been in the Kaipara for probably the last 6 or 7 years with the growth aspect, and the fact that we've needed to do representation reviews pretty much every 3 years, as a matter of fact. You only have to do it every 6 years, according to legislation, but you can do it earlier. And because of that growth and because of the changing patterns of population within the district, we've actually had to do it every 3 years as a result. So that's kind of what you're talking to.
And there's one more option that we've included in this presentation. This is 6 councillors from 2 wards often. 2 wards, 1 east, 1 west, with 3 councillors each.
This is our radical one that we presented at the last briefing, yeah.
They like to shake things up a little bit. So this option here, you were talking about the boundary before. This is somewhere where you could put the boundary that would leave each ward with equivalent populations. Doesn't have to be here, although you do have to follow mesh blocks, so we can't just draw it anywhere. This was placement of a boundary that would leave the 2 wards with similar populations. We'd still have to comply with the plus or minus 10% rule. So in this case, the East Ward is 13,380 and the West Ward is 13,880. That would mean that each councillor is representing about the same number.
Through the chair, this is my final question now. So the sum of parts is always greater than whole. So if you have east and west, you have only 6 councillors, because now the ratio has gone to 4,000 for each, down or up from 3,300. So which means the more you dissect, the more councillor you can have. Is that right?
Sorry.
So you have like two options, east and west.
Yeah.
Like, the population size is the same.
Yes.
So then you only need 6 councillors for 2 wards. Because the more you dissect, the more you can play with minuses and pluses to create more.
Well, we could go to 8 if we wanted to and have,
Can you from this one, east and west as well?
yes,
How?
it would fit. 8 would fit.
Just have 4 members, isn't it?
Or instead of 3 each,
Yeah.
you can have 4 each.
So why that option is not?
Well, we were being a bit radical there and saying if you wanted to decrease your numbers, this would fit, or decrease your numbers and decrease your number of wards, this could be considered.
If I can say, this is why we're having the conversation, actually, to start testing out the possibilities and the options here. And that is obviously one.
Well, the direction might be absolutely not.
Councillor Lambeth, followed by councillor Vincent.
So, it's a question and a sort of, in a statement really, but, if you had this with a solid 3 councillors in each area, as the demographics change, that would be solid, but that boundary could move to accommodate for that 10%?
With the growth on the east.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or if the west started to grow,
At the next review, yes, it could be adjusted.
and that would be a heck of a lot simpler, wouldn't it?
Could be, yes.
The other thing is that, correct me if I'm wrong, but the remuneration for every councillor is divvied up as a fixed lump sum between every councillor. So the less councillors we have, the more
The greater the
remuneration.
That's right.
More meaningful the role could be.
And the more,
Don't seem like-
the more in line would be in other remuneration packages with other councillors in the north. Would that be correct statement?
Yeah, the other 2 northern councils do have a higher population per councillor ratio. It's around 7,000.
Thank you.
Councillor Vincent.
Thank you. Yeah, firstly, I'm sorry that I missed your first presentation, but if the morning session hadn't been such a fiasco, I guess I would have had time to, but and I don't know if it would have made any difference, but it's only just in the last day or two I had the thought, thinking historically, the first Kaipara District Council had 4 wards, I believe, and 10 councillors, 3 and 2 and 3 and 2. And not wishing necessarily we have 10 councillors, but I wonder if we were to start from the East Coast and have okay, where's the line for 2 councillors? You would probably have a Mangawhai ward, and then you would have a Kaiwaka ward, and then you would have like I was just thinking, and the boundary of the Kaiwaka ward would be more to the west than it is now. And that way, I just wonder if that might provide a better representation of communities of interest.
Go to 4 wards, for example.
4 wards.
Is that what you're suggesting, or even 5?
No, we'll just stick with, I think, a maximum 8 councillors, but I guess we could go 4 wards rather than backwards, but.
4 2 times of 2 each, but you've got to, then the problem is of identifying your communities of interest and then fitting your population into those within that plus or minus 10%. That's the problem.
Yes, I suppose I'm going it from the opposite.
Yeah.
There must come a time when there will be a Mangawhai ward, I would have thought. Just in terms of its community of interest.
Yeah, well, I mean, so Kaiwaka Mangawhai, and these options is 3 councillors. There's the option of perhaps splitting that into 2 wards. Maybe Mangawhai would have 2 and Kaiwaka 1. We'd have to model that. We'd have to look at the populations.
I guess that would be the quick and easy way to do it, but I'm just thinking, well, if it was 2 councillors from each ward, without actually giving it a lot of analysis, it just occurs to me that that would be might well be a beneficial approach to take in terms of looks. Like in terms of from people looking in to see that they are being represented equally.
Just another little, would the prospective elected members, they need to reside in their wards?
No, you don't.
I know.
Just need to be nominated.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean, the point here is it doesn't matter how you cut and dice it. You still have to cut and dice it based on numbers. So your numbers, each council has to reflect a number that's roughly plus or minus 10% out of everybody else.
Correct.
So that's where it gets complicated, trying to create more.
And the added complication, as Dale keeps saying actually too, is the fact that the first step is communities of interest as well. So you've got to have like people with a community of interest within that ward. So it does get quite complicated.
Councillor Larson.
Are you wanting any comment or are you just wanting us to ask questions at this stage?
Well, we're asking questions and comment as we go, I guess.
Okay, well, my comment, and it's a complex subject and I suspect we might not get everyone's thoughts in today and you might have to come back with some of this via email if we haven't got to the end of it.
It is quite complicated, Dyson. What's our timescale here,
Okay, so
City Mayor?
through Mr. Mayor, I might get Dale to help me out a wee bit here, but we've got time to have a good conversation today with good questions and hopefully get some direction.
Yes.
I suppose we could do it over, get feedback over email, but that becomes problematic in some ways, but it could be the answer forward. Just let me sort of outline the next steps first so you can be clear on what that is and we'll go from there, okay? So the goal today was hopefully to get some form of direction on a preferred option. We are starting to scratch the surface now and understand how complicated it is and technical it is. Then on the 4th of September, there's an ordinary council meeting scheduled prior to the briefing where we will be asking the council to adopt the preferred option and then allow us to go to consultation with the community prior to the 14th statutory timeframe. So obviously behind the scenes, our staff have to then create a consultation document. They have to get the process ready for consultation and all of that sort of stuff. So there's some work in the background we need to do post that and prior to it. So if we can get some direction, and I'm also very mindful that there are 3 councillors, I believe, who aren't here at the moment, too. I've been thinking about a backup option in case it's needed. I haven't talked to Dale or Ben or anybody about this yet, but I mean, we do have a council meeting next week. If you wanted to progress further information, we could do a briefing after the council meeting, if you wanted to, but I'm in your hands here. That will start constricting the timeframes a little bit to report to the 4th. So I might need to move that out and have a separate extraordinary council meeting to agree it. So, this is the statutory timeframes we're running to, and it is quite difficult. We do have some possibilities to try and get through here, but my suggestion would be, thank you, Councillor Larson, for the suggestion. It's a possibility, but if we keep pushing through and just having the conversation, see what we go land today, we'll go from there, maybe.
I have a question.
Hang on, you want to complete the question?
Well, yeah, I mean, my initial comment is that I don't think we should be doing anything, making any radically different changes. I think it can be really confusing for our ratepayers. It's okay for us because we're in the middle of the process and we're thinking about it all. Oftentimes for them, the first time they think about where they are is when they get their next election papers or something like, so too many changes I think can be really confusing for people. I also think that at the moment we have our communities of interest nailed down reasonably well, and I think they're working quite well the way that we've arranged. I don't really like that idea of chopping up a reasonable chunk of the west coast and making it into the sort of urban Dargaville area. I think it's messy, and it also looks messy in terms of then having one councillor over that whole large Greater Wairoa ward area. I think it's confusing. So my initial response is that I think that the first proposal of making a very minor adjustment boundary of the Wairoa and the Potamatia wards is going to be the least confusing. It's going to still keep these communities of interest in a pretty cohesive way like we currently have. And given our extraordinary time constraints as well, it might be the easiest way to deal with it, especially that you've got to go out and consult.
Can I just interrupt for 2 ticks? Thank you, Mr. Councillor Larson. Do you mind, Mr. Mayor, if I just ask Dale to let you know what the process is after the initial proposal and the timeframes around that, just so you're clear on the public consultation aspect? And that, do you mind could you just outline that, please, Dale?
So, once the initial proposal is made, we've got a certain 7 days in which to do a public notice, and that could be in the newspapers and on your website, and that starts the submission period. Because it's a shortened review, that's now reduced to 3 weeks. So we have a public submission period for people to make submissions on the proposal over a 3-week period. So council will then, after that period closes, will then consider those submissions, have a hearing if necessary, so people can say, I want to be heard, so they can have a hearing. And then the council will then deliberate on the submissions made and make a decision as to whether they want to, for the final proposal, adopt the initial proposal or make changes as a result of the submissions to land on a final proposal. Once that's made, that's a formal council resolution. Again, we start that process again, it's a formal public notice and is made, and then there's another period of 3 weeks in which any objections or appeals can be received. So there's actually 2 bites of the cherry for people to make contributions. If there is just one objection or appeal received, the whole matter goes off to the Local Government Commission, which has been done before. I remember having some hearings where the commission came up, among our heads actually. So it just needs one, and then the whole matter goes off to the commission. It's taken out of council's control. The commission will look at all the material, look at the consultation undertaken, all that sort of thing, and they'll make their determination, and that must be made by the 10th of April next year.
Councillor Vincent, you're next.
Thank you. Yeah, well, actually, I just want to go down the same track as Councillor Larson, that the thought I had about a 4th ward, or even add into the idea of having just 2 wards, those are more fundamental and have wider implications as changes. We have, with all due respect, this is a quick and dirty process, constrained by the legislation, and I'd be happy to blame the government for that. It's not of our making, and apart from the decision we made to go down this path, but that's what we're presented with. So I think we need to find a quick and dirty solution, which is, as Councillor Larson's saying, that we stick with the minor alteration to boundaries, and then so it's familiar to most people where they are, apart from Libby past the but I thought she was still in the central ward, but so that would be accept the reality of this process. We're best to keep it close to what we have now, and
This option here.
Give that option.
Yeah.
and think about more fundamental things next time round, which probably won't involve me, but.
Councillor Nair, followed by Councillor Aaron Wilson-Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I come back to that cog in the wheel. You talked about that you're using the population estimate, which are the most recent estimates.
Correct.
I just Googled it. It's the most recent census or the most recent population estimate. So it can be most recent census as well. In the whole time frame, when we get it, would you be inclined to change it, or you will, because census is more deliberative and confirming than an estimate. So you get the question. My question is based on, say, 1,000. Sorry, do you have to
Listen carefully to the answer.
No, can you listen carefully to me, please?
I have.
So you haven't. Yeah. So my question is, we have 27,000 estimate. The other estimate is 28,000. You can't use the 1,000 more, which is probably in the west, on the basis that you are using the most recent population estimate by statistics. But there is a option of most recent census by statistics, New Zealand as well. So my question is, in this whole scheme of things, if you get that, whereby you have 1,000 crores, would you be inclined to change it or not?
No, we cannot by law. So even though the census, down to the detail, won't come out until October, November, but by law, we cannot use that. We must use the 2023 estimates.
But the Google says you can use either.
No.
Google's wrong, Ash.
The law, the Local Electoral Act says we must use those.
If you can clarify on that, will be awesome.
So legal process we're following. So Councillor Aaron Wilson-Collins, you had a question.
Yeah.
Followed by Gordon.
On the update at the most inappropriate time. Sorry, I still, yeah, if this council can't see the value of all wards, I'd still be interested in scrapping all of them. But we're obviously not going to go down that path. The comments that I wanted to make is, communities of interest. And this is again, forward thinking, because I agree with the sentiment that we shouldn't do a lot of change right now. But I don't think we've nailed our communities of interest at all. One of the biggest criticisms that I hear of this council is that places like Bailey's Beach and Te Kopuru and Kaiwaka, which are outliers of the bigger centres, included in the same wards as those bigger centres, are often forgotten about and not represented. So I don't think this actually does nail it. I am very interested in the Dartmoor Bailey's Beach conglomerate, but then the people who are closer to Te Kopuru in those rural areas may not feel that they belong to that. But presently they do, because we have that one gigantic ward. I do though have a concern with having only one councillor for a ward. I don't think that's an appropriate way ever to go. I think it would be great to always have at least two per ward, because then you've actually got a better democratic representation. And then the other, the two wards, the east and west as you've called them, again, I struggle here with communities of interest. I'm very certain that the people of Paparoa and Mamatoroto will struggle to say that they have a community of interest with the likes of Mangawhai. I also.
Otamatea ward together,
Sorry?
used to be an Otamatea ward together,
Yeah, but times of.
the county council.
Yes, but Mangawhai has changed and what drives Mangawhai is not as it used to be at all. So, but the other thing that I really struggle with here, even though I love 6 councillors, really do, what I struggle with here is the fact that it's east and west. And if the council was ever to go down this path, by God, please at least change.
Change the name.
Yes.
Fucking
Yes.
I know it was, but I'm just laying that all out, for those who may be here in the future, because as we've heard, we seem to do this every 3 years. So unfortunately, I think it looks like we're just going to land on the poor people in Boyle Road getting bandied about.
We could do some targeted campaigning with those 110 affected people and explain it beforehand. Once it goes through, if it's landed on with this option, we could actually be more proactive as a council and sort of talk to those 110 people.
Yeah, and I think that would be really, really kind, because I know that it's frustrating because they already are doing their research and then they get their papers in the mail and realise they actually now belong to a different ward because they weren't necessarily engaged.
Perhaps like in the American elections, it's the swing state.
You're going to call me Councillor Howard, will you? Sorry.
Thinking about it when I was looking at you.
Really? Interesting.
There you go.
Almost as interesting as this, I agree with Erin a lot. What you said there, that east and west is bad karma. Even if you called it north and south would be better, but I like the option of 6 councillors. I like the option of 5. Why can't we keep the same boundaries, and how does the ratio work out with 2, 1 and 2? Because I'm very frightened about the Paparoa Ruawai area being divvied up, them being the borderlands. I'm pretty sure if you go to 5 councillors, we're still below the other representational numbers for other councillors in Northland.
We would be.
So 2, 5 and 2 plus a mayor, that's still 6, eh?
5 is the.
7. Yeah. So have we looked at that option at all?
No.
We'd have to model that, but I think it's very likely you'd have to make boundary changes.
Yes, but they would be minor in a sense, and you would still have those 3 wards, which the public are comfortable with. And Ruawai still gets their representation.
Yeah. We would have to look into exactly how minor or significant those boundary changes would have to be.
5 is your minimum. You can have between 5 and 29.
Yes.
So that you're going right down to the minimum.
We are about making cuts.
District, I mean, let's face it.
We're about making cuts and those 4 people off the elected members will mean about $100,000 savings in expenses for us every year. I'm just throwing it out there.
You give us direction and we can have a quick look, but
I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. I think the other ones are divvying up Bailey's Beach, you know, like you said with Te Koperu, the divvying up the Dargaville ward where you've got Dargaville has got rural areas in, farming areas. Who's going to represent those farmers within the Dargaville ward? Yes. Yeah.
You know where the first boundary went for the first term? Up Hopping the Road.
Yes, it's crazy, wasn't it?
Poto and north was Dargaville.
Yeah.
So,
Sorry.
bear with me for a second, Mr Mayor. Councillor Lambeth, so are we clear on the option you were talking about here?
looking at,
Just
Councillors.
count one elected member off each ward.
this is the option that is in slide, I think
No, it's not.
that one there,
Your
except
recommended option.
it's not 8 councillors, it's 5 councillors from 3 wards, and we'd have to look at how it would fit in with this. We actually need to do that adjustment or not. We have to look into that, or whether it's bigger or smaller.
I'd really like to see that rather than this 8, 8, 8, 8. There's 4 options of 8.
Yep.
Why don't we have a look at a lean option too?
I actually support this option of 5 as well. It'll be interesting to see how it looks like, but I don't think that we'll be saving that 100,000 because if it's a pool, it goes to 5 people.
No,
Catch it.
you didn't hear what I said. I said relating to expenses. I'm not saying related to remuneration. Each of us costs the council, Jason, quite a bit to keep us here.
For travel costs.
Travel costs and everything else, computer, IMT and everything else.
Okay, thank
There
you.
is a cost associated with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor
Fine.
Williams?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting, discussion and lots of options and other things to look at. Yeah, I was kind of leaning more towards the, not making too many changes, such a short time frame for people. But, 6 or 5 does sound absolutely okay as well. If we weren't going to change too much in the time frame, I would go for the recommended option just at this point in time.
Councillor Larson?
Yeah, I think that you need to have some balance around the number of councillors. If you have too few, in terms of sharing workload as well. I'd be concerned about having one councillor in a large, possibly even larger automobile ward, and then all of the work demands of all of the requirements and all the plans and things we have to get through. I mean, we've got a hell of a lot on at the moment. We had to spread it over several less people. It could be quite onerous.
Yeah, as a
You'd be getting
part-time
paid more
role.
too.
But as a part-time role, it would be onerous.
But not that much more. Actually.
Almost twice as much as just 4.
Okay, how are we going to wrap this up?
Difficulty. Okay, so Mr Mayor, so an additional option that you want some numbers on the table here, from some of you, there is, I think we're down to 2, well, possibly. We've got the recommended option, which has some support, but you would like to see what that recommended option with 5 councillors looks like. Dale?
Could I make a comment? This work won't take us long. Could we just
Absolutely.
go back there, work it out, you do your next briefing, and we can just come back and it won't take us long to work through, yeah.
So,
We're not used to that sort of efficient.
okay, so am I reading the room right here? So the preferred option is still there. And generally, because of the lack of changes and the need to get this done quickly, all that sort of stuff, you're generally comfortable with that, possibly as preferred. However, you'd like Dale and Ben to look at the same ward structure with 5 councillors first. And they go, I do that number, come back after the next presenter and we have a bit more of a further conversation and wrap it up there. Is that where we're going?
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
A bit more comfortable.
Fantastic. Cool then?
Yep, okay. Yeah, on that road. I can't look at the 222 option in the ward.
Oh, the coffee.
Isn't it? It still drops off two.
Maybe let's a further conversation when they come back. All right, we've got these guys here, small films.
Okay, so we're having 5 minutes to get a cup of tea?
I was having 5 minutes.
5 minutes, yeah, I see everyone's keen to have 5 minutes.
Okay. Okay, back.
5 minutes.
Okay, welcome back to this briefing, 21st of August. Our second item is external presenter Sport Northland Aquatic Strategy. Welcome Stu Middleton and John Wansbone. The floor is yours. Thank you. And Hayley.
So morning, Nakoto. This application is by Sport Northland on the Northland Aquatics Facility Plan. So this is a strategic review across all of Northland's aquatic facilities, obviously. So it's the key things that Sport Northland will be talking to you about will be the recommendations and findings, both local and regional. Where we're our progress on two of the items that we've got already from those recommendations, and then next steps. So what we want to do with the remainder of those recommendations. So I'll hand it over to Sport Northland to introduce themselves.
Morning, Nakoto, called John Winsbone to here. So my name is John Winsbone from I won't take up too much time in introductions, but just introducing Stu Middleton. Stu's our Spaces and Places manager, highly involved over the past 20 years with the facility space. And up to Stu.
Kia ora. I have obviously sat here before, so I recognise most of the faces. Good to see you all again. Hayley has introduced it nicely. So it was basically the opportunity to share a recently completed aquatics facilities plan for the whole region, but really sort of focusing on Piper and what it means in relation to that. So had a few of the key recommendations, which I'm going to talk to exactly where we're at currently with those, and then what we're doing into the future, exactly as Hayley mentioned. So sort of to give it a bit of context or background, I mean, you're aware that the vision of both Sport Northland and Competition Council align quite closely. We're both in it for the same reasons, and the pools or aquatic provision as a whole can assist in actually achieving those. And I think the Kaipara, well, what we need to look at here is addressing the shortfall within the Kaipara, which we'll get to in a couple of slides, which is in comparison to the rest of Northland, not too bad, but it still poses a reasonable amount of consideration to ensure that we address that appropriately. I've thrown a few images in here as we go through, just to sort of give some visual of some of the sites we're talking about, and this is the Cody Coast Pool, which all of you should be familiar with, and this one just shows the range of activities that occur. The bottom piece with competitive swimmers diving off start blocks is probably the smallest part of the activity that occurs there, and the higher one with kids just having fun doing bombs is probably what you would see there 90 to 95% of the time. So where did this come from? Back in 2021, we developed a strategy for Northland called Koriki Te Waka Hauora, which is a strategy to play active rec and sport. And one of the key recommendations, or the joint recommendations for the 3 districts, was to develop a plan for the aquatics facilities. That was completed end of last year, and was called the Northland Aquatics Facilities Plan. Another image. So again, Cody Coast pool here, and this is on one of the whānau days. So a lot of activity and a lot of youth in there doing everything probably other than competitive swimming. There's a lot of fun fishing around, which is what we get into a little bit further. We've got a lot of lane water, we've got a lot of deep, cold lane water locked behind school fences. What we don't have is a lot of shallow warm water for health and wellbeing and for hydrotherapy use. So the Northland Aquatics Facilities Plan was a joint effort. Sport Northland coordinated it. It was actually funded via Sport NZ, the 3 councils, and 3 district councils and regional councils. So quite a large collaboration to get this project across the line. We engaged RSL as the consultants to develop the plan. It didn't just consider lane swimming, it was a lot broader than that. So warm water facilities, learn to swim, competitive swimming, right across the region. It didn't look at waterways as in rivers, lakes, ponds, so it was strictly facilities. And the plan does highlight some significant shortfalls, and it's probably worth pointing out here that the only region in worse state than ourselves is Auckland, and that's just because of the sheer number of people that live there. Near on impossible to actually provide adequate amount for that. So they're looking at about 27 cubic metres per 1,000 head population. And on the next slide, we'll have a look at that in a bit more detail. And the plan does contain recommendations for the region, and then it breaks that down into individual districts. So the actual shortfall, and if we look at the, it doesn't go up there, the shortfall effectively, Kuiper in the middle here is currently around about that 400 cubic metres. We are short on. That's projected to expand out over the next 20 years. It's fair to say that the biggest issue was Whangarei, and they're already well advanced in starting to look at how they can address that, but it still means that the Kuiper has some work to do. Now, what I mentioned was we're not actually lacking in cold lane deep water. It's the health and wellbeing stuff. So we have in the Kuiper 21 pools. One of those is a community pool. The other 20 are locked behind school fences. 7 of those have some form of community access. Predominantly, that's the old school. Here's a key. Use it on the summer, and you can go and have a swim. Dargaville High School has a bit of a better structured system where they actually do have swim lessons, etc. occurring. They have a very good indoor heated pool on site, but again, only accessible when the school is happy for it to be accessible. So a 25-metre pool is about 375 cubic metres for a standard 25-metre lane pool. But I'm saying we're not lacking those, we're lacking hydrotherapy, we're lacking learn to swim. So if you look at that, we're probably lacking a good couple of each of those in relation to the amount of water we're short of currently. And what I've got here, so jumping into the recommendations, so there were 6 specific recommendations for the Kuiper, and there were actually 2 for each of the areas. 2 for Kuiper West, 2 for Kuiper Central.
Can I just interrupt you there? I've got a question here from Councillor Lambeth.
Yeah.
That rapidly decreases during the winter and summer, doesn't it? Those numbers, they go all, it's thrown up in the air and everything changes, doesn't it?
So the numbers are taken blanketly across. So what we're doing is we're having all of our provision in a 6-month window, and then we're having pretty much no provision in a 6-month window. Yes. So when you look at somewhere like Whangarei, the provision is spread across the 12 months, and the Kuiper it's squeezed into a 4-month window. So if we can expand the window, which I'll get into in a little bit, because if we can actually warm some of that water, and we can go from 4 to 6 or 6 to 8 months, we're actually extending our window slightly and increasing those numbers. So you're right, it's a very up and down window at the moment.
And of course, what a lot of people don't see is the amount of people who give up swimming in the winter months.
And then don't come back.
But it pulses, doesn't it? The amount of people, you don't need the same amount to serve the population in the winter months, because a lot of people don't swim in the winter.
Correct, yes. Understand there. What we do have, and even if we have a lot of people that you can choose whether you want to lane swim. A lot of the people that are using it for health-related reasons, a lot of older people that require hydrotherapy type warm water for health reasons, they are still having to access that, which is requiring travel to Whangarei right through that winter period. So we have some other issues there as well. So there were 6 recommendations identified for the Kuiper, 2 in Kuiper West, which was all based around, in the West it was Dargaville High School. It was actually, like I mentioned, they've got a good heated indoor pool, and it's actually working with the school to get a more workable access of that for community use, but also looking at Cody Coast Pool and how we can potentially enclose the warm water elements of that, so enclosing the learn to swim in the hydrotherapy space. In Kaipara Central, there were some recommendations to look at Otamatea High School. That was identified as probably a central location with a key piece of infrastructure that wasn't what you'll find with most of the school pools. They're about 50 years old. Most pools have about a 50-year life. They also have plant that needs to be replaced. So it was looking at application, but also the actual state of that pool, where it was in relation to end of life. So Otamatea High School was deemed to be the spot to look at. So looking at access through the school, but also looking at some upgrades to that and potentially expanding that access window. And then to the Kaipara, the recommendation there was to again secure community access to the school pool, which is the Mangawhai school, but also look at the potential for a new pool to be built in this area, and that becomes quite complex. And we'll jump into the next slide, where what are we actually doing? We have started with 2 feasibility studies, one in the Kaipara, one in the in Otamatea, Rangitoto. That's due to come in as a draft today or tomorrow. So that's exploring, looking at Otamatea in relation to access, and then also potentially covering, not enclosing, but covering that pool, warming it in some way, and maybe even adding some sort of like a hydrotherapy pool, which would be much like a home spa. It's just a larger version of that can be used for hydrotherapy use. So some cost-effective ways to extend the season and to offer some extra elements of water access.
Can I ask you a question? Is in your summation of how many pools are available out there, I am aware, did that include any private facilities that are doing hydrotherapy and stuff?
It didn't, but that's a good point. There's quite a few hydrotherapy pools locked behind rest home gates, so aged care and or hospitals. But so it didn't go into that detail. That's something that can be explored, but from my understanding, the difficulty of actually gaining access to those is as hard, if not harder, than the school pools. So we could look at private providers in that respect, or even private providers building and administering their own pools.
So the other question before I go to Councillor Larson is, with the warm hydrotherapy situation for people that are trying to recover from injury, and people that are trying to get mobile again, all that sort of thing.
Yep.
Does ACC play a part in funding that?
Yes, in some areas they will bankroll program delivery. So there's quite often it's not just an individual in the pool. They'll actually run programs where there might be 10, 15 people in there, much like any other group fitness site classes. So they subsidise those and or entry to the facility. Yep.
Okay. Councillor Larson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I understood that there was a private swimming facility at Mangawhai.
There are some there's a learn to swim.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes, and there's talk of a couple of other small private type builds occurring. Yes.
Have you had any conversations with Mike Ferguson? He was a presenter to our long-term plan about the full proposal.
I haven't spoken to him personally, no.
Okay, he might be a good person to talk to here. You'd be able to get contact details from council. He made a presentation, a commercial proposal for a pool during our long-term plan submissions.
So they are probably halfway through the development of a feasibility study for the space. So as long as I can get the consultants in contact with him, because that's the sort of information they require.
Sure.
So we go into that, and should I talk to the Mangawhai one at the moment, what we're looking at in that respect? So we obviously have some real limitations in Mangawhai with power and water supply. So the brief or the scope for the feasibility study here was actually a lot more complex than others, where we're asking them to look at low water, low energy options, but also potential saltwater options where there are quite a number across the country. So most other areas like Mangataroto, we're basically looking at an existing pool and what we can do to enhance that and increase usage or extend usage. Here in the Kaipara, we've got to look at some outside the box type options. Now, even if there are some other private pools coming online, they'll be running into the same difficulties. So it'd be good to share information and ensure we're not sucking all the power and all the water out of the region.
Okay, councillor Lambert, followed by councillor Vincent. I think I got them in the right order.
Just on that private pool thing, I don't know if you're aware of the youngest pool in Mangatauperi.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but hers is mainly associated with the swim classes and all that. So it's part of a tool of the complete package, yes?
Yep. And that's where there are quite a few learn to swim, so private learn to swim options. There's not many hydrotherapy options out there that are in private.
That's correct, yes.
Councillor Vincent.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to ask similar lines actually, but in the opposite direction. Like, in terms of your stock take, did you take into account? It's just that there is one, I understand, at Te Hana, which is patronised by people I know from where I live, which is quite considerable distance.
That's a good point. No, within the plan it is the boundary. But what we were trying to do was to look across the boundary. So if there was 2 hydrotherapy pools just across the boundary in Whangarei, but there were none in the Kaipara, was there a need to build any at that point or to access any of that space when there was some in close proximity? So looking at each district independently, but the whole region as a whole, but it didn't cross into that Auckland space.
Because it would have a bearing on the demand. I think is aqua aerobics, is that hydrotherapy?
No, they normally do that in a lane pool in deep water, but it would be preferable to be slightly warmed.
Yeah, it was. I think the water is warmed.
It is at Te Hana, and that's where a lot of people go from Manawa and Kaiwaka to do swimming lessons. I wheels through that facility. So, yeah.
Can I ask?
Councillor Lambert, next, is it?
I've done.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. So you did mention that there are issues with the schools' pools. They are very old and upgraded. You did mention a couple of schools here. And I guess when you said you support from KDC and Sport New Zealand, I don't know what's the funding model, but you also mentioned that you use Dargaville High School for hydrotherapy and other things.
For learn to swim.
Yeah. Are you funding any of them, or you are just using the facilities? Because they're already old. Are you looking to fund that as well or not?
No, but we have been trying to determine the best model for that to occur. So Sport Northland doesn't have funding. We tend to connect organisations with funders to access that. 2 examples in the Whangarei district are the Tiki High School pool and the Bream Bay College pool. So we have worked with a local trust in Tikipunga, so Tikipunga Pride, who actually access funding through grant funding to pay for lifeguards to man that over the summer months. In Bream Bay, we worked with council for them to actually provide a subsidy for the first 2 years, and trying to work with a local trust there to actually take on board that role and access the funding to actually cover costs. Both of them run a gold coin donation as well, so they get a few $1,000s for people coming through, and I think they've got 3,000 people through the Tiki pool, and they've got about $6,000 in donation, but it costs about $40,000 to open that pool with water, power, chemicals and staffing. So we've had to subsidise that through other gaming trust funding or grant funding to achieve.
CLM still running Tikipana?
Yep, so CLM have both of those, those contracts. So we have small contracts, or they have small contracts with those trusts to run that. We're also limited with the schools that you can work with in the relation to the location of the pool within the school grounds. The ones that are located on a boundary with external access, that doesn't mean that people are going into the wider school, tend to be the ones that are more logical to use. Both of those pools, we did early work with those trusts to actually upgrade the plant. So the plant was at a point where it was aged to a point where it wasn't working effectively. So there was a substantial amount of funding through both Ministry of Ed and the trust to upgrade the plant and ensure that that pool can take the load that it is when it's got community use occurring over the summer months. And Tikipunga Pool gets an absolute hammer, and and what it has also done, if you know where Tikipunga High School pool is, it's only a stone throw from the Whangarei Falls, and that's where all of the youth used to swim. And there's quite a danger there in relation to efforts, moving them from there. Now, I'd say 90% of them now swim at the school pool. But when I've been there, they're just doing bombs and out and bombs and out and bombs.
My concern, just clarifying on that, my concern really is that all these organizations you are leasing to, like CLM, they are not performing. And the about Dargaville is not performing, right? A lot of complaints and everything. And we are looking at using the schools as a strategy. I don't think it's wise to, as a council, to not provide community pool off standard and just passing on to schools with no extra help.
Yeah, so the decision hasn't been made to use those. That's where we're at the moment. So the work that we'd be doing here would be identifying some school pools, working out whether there is the potential to use those, how that would actually be managed in relation to the setup of day-to-day operation, but also accessing funding, etc. So it might come out that the best option is to build another 2 pools. But we need to go through that process to determine what that is. School access is just one of the options.
Thank you.
Councillor Rusk.
I have a completely contrary view to that. I think that the Otamatia pool is an excellent location, central, good facility. I think heating, it's a bit over the top. Back in the day, you just got a red tank swimming in that icy cold water. What's happened to the new generation? But
and I think that's a good example where I don't think we're going to say it has to be a school pool. It might end up being that there's a school pool used in one area, but there's a new pool built somewhere else, and there's another option again in a third location. So I think it's working out what is best, what we've currently got, and what we can do with that at the moment.
as a counter to the previous comment, I would be very cautious about committing ratepayers to the funding of pools. And I would rather see them operated as commercial ventures that are balancing their own books. So.
Okay, this is the Otamatia High School pool, and where that rainbow is could potentially be a cover. So we're not.
It's a leprechaun with a big.
So, yeah, we're not saying to enclose it, but the idea is here were to cover, obviously, so that if it was inclement weather, you weren't in there with all the instructors or parents on the side getting wet, but also, solar maybe to warm and some sort of mobile type.
So my knowledge of that, over that back fence to the right, is public land. It's not school land.
You can expand, yes, yep, and you can access. So access is easy, expansion is possible. So even expanding, so you've got summer activity space, etc. as well.
Did Griffiths and Associates come up with a plan for it or not? Did they submit something?
This one, no, we're working with RSL again, and the reason we continued with them was they had done all the background work for the regional plan, so they're using, it effectively became a cheaper process. Where are we at now? Regional recommendations, so there were quite a number of regional recommendations. I basically pulled out the ones that were key or most applicable. So what we were just talking about a moment ago, investigating the most effective long-term ownership model for aquatic facilities. There's a range of those. There's about 4 options that I'll touch on in a moment. The appropriate levels of funding that are required to actually by councils to ensure that those can be operated, maintained and renewed. And have the conversation, identifying the suitable school pools that could be available for community use, and that's not saying that they will, could consider how community school partnership pools can meet requirements of the Learn to Swim. So again, it's looking at how that can be addressed. They're deep at the moment. What can we do in relation to warming, making them shallow, etc. So the ones to focus on. So Whangarei District Council has already taken the bull by the horns in relation to the ownership piece here. So they, straight off the back of this plan be completed, they engage consultants to do a review of Whangarei Aquatic Centre and also do a review of the ownership model. That review has indicated that Whangarei District Council would be best placed to take ownership of the Whangarei Aquatic Centre on. And they are now currently, they've engaged a consultant to do a business case for that change of ownership. Not to say that this is the perfect model for the Kaipara, but this is where Whangarei is, and Hayley included a report on the end of the Northland Facilities Plan that sort of gave some background around what that looks like. So that's where Whangarei's at. They're happy to share the information they've gained and the experience they're having, but it is for Kaipara to determine which option could be best in their district. So the plan identified 4 options. One was that the ownership sits with Sport Northland, or one was that Sport Northland exit ownership and sell that back to, or sell the pools to a council, or basically hand them over to a council, or council consider having a council controlled organisation that pool is transferred to, or that there is a trust that exists that it is it's transferred to, or a trust is set up for it to be transferred to. In the Kaipara's case, this would be going back to where we were previously, and we've already found out that didn't work. So we can probably cross that one off for the moment. Or the last one is that Sport Northland
Harsh. That's a bit harsh. It did work. The reason why it didn't work was because we had no licence to occupy as a trust, and we couldn't advance anything. So it worked very effectively for a long period of time.
Yep. Oh, and it actually got the pool in the ground and where it is without the trust.
Different trust running it than what actually built it.
Okay.
But the trust that was running it ran it very effectively.
Did it not have a licence to occupy?
No, that was the problem. So anyway, no, sorry to interrupt, but I think that comment's a bit harsh.
Yeah, no, I retract that. I'm
aware
that was the case. And I think that, the license, if that was all that there was,
that means that we couldn't develop the hydrotherapy and covered and all that. So that was where the problem lied.
Yeah. So yes, if we can rectify those pieces, by all means, all systems on the table.
CLM have been given the boot from Whangarei?
No.
Oh, they're still running it?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
They have.
Sorry to interrupt.
They still have 9 years on their current contract, I think.
Okay.
They entered into a 12-year contract, which they're 3 years into. Yep. So the final one on there was that Sport Northland retains ownership, but it was looking at the actual funding in relation to that and how that works. So I suppose the key piece here is the bullet point at the bottom. At the moment, we are working with KDC staff in relation to those feasibility studies and the work in each of those recommendations, and we will continue to work with staff in that space, and also looking at what these options could look like, and hopefully bringing some sort of recommendation to yourselves in relation to what we believe is the best option for the Kaipara.
Councillor Nair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have one question. Back slide, please.
Backside?
Yeah, slide. Sure. So the Kauri Coast Community Pool, you want to exit as a facility which are not being well managed, right, by the current owners. So in terms of the options. So what I'm asking you is having another asset management expertise body, another layer of management to manage the 3 pools, so taking money from all the three councils. How is gonna help it? If you cannot manage as CLM, how you put another layer on it of management, asset management expertise? I don't understand how much asset management expertise you require to manage a pool.
So I think at the moment, what it's identified across the region is that the model that is in place, and the models are slightly different, each different, nothing's working. And we need to identify an appropriate model for each district and each facility. So these are options that will need to be explored and expanded upon. And that's what I'm saying. We're going to work with KDC staff to actually work out what the best model is, may be. That might not be the option, or if it is the option, we'd need to really break down exactly what that funding model looks like and what that expertise looks like and how it all fits together.
Would you also look at looking at options in the market apart from CLM, commercial options?
Yes, so in the far north, we did go to the market. There is probably 4 major players, but there's really only 2. There's Belgravia and there's CLM that are the 2. Belgravia's just got the contract for Te Huku Sports Hub, so the pool that's just come online in Kaitaia. And just like CLM, they also have, they come with their issues as well. YMCA was another one, or Swim, so I think was the 4th one. So there are a few other options out there, and we did go to the market. So RFP, quite an in-depth process, and they ended up with, Belgravia and
YMCA is a very good player in Auckland, in Mount Albert. I've seen it.
Yep.
So it's good to check the market before you just throw it on the council back.
Yeah, YMCA, they are the 3rd biggest, and quite often the actual management is shifted between those organisations as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was wondering, just trying to get a handle on things, how we differentiate between operating costs and capital development.
Yeah.
Income streams and what the best structure is to, one, successfully manage the facility, but also like provide for its ongoing upgrading or renovation, whatever, as and when required, which presumably there's an asset management plan somewhere, I don't know, which would indicate forecasted capital requirements.
That's the gap, I think, we've identified. That is the asset management gap. You know, with an asset now is what, 10, 15 years old, in terms of rented and maintenance costs, quite in its first 10 years of its life, and then suddenly it's going like that. And in hindsight, you know, if there was a good quality management plan that set out, you know, good quality preventative maintenance schedule all the way through, it might have been a lot different. But to fund that, you know, that requires.
Because it seems to me it's like, you know, a definition of a public swimming pool is a hole in the ground that you pour money into.
That is.
The plant costs a lot, so we are.
You're dealing with corrosive substances as well.
Very corrosive environments. Not only the plant, but all of the fittings even if we've got stainless in all of the indoor ones, that tends to still deteriorate, needs to be replaced. Everything starts to wear. Plant. So what Whangarei identified was they were providing operating and maintenance subsidies, but once you got, like John was saying, the 15-year mark, the renewals was what was starting to kill it, because the renewal of plant becomes unsustainable. We're now looking probably at a $3 million refit of that facility to get the plant back up to standard. So that's where the.
I suppose for me, one of my hobby horses, I have to be clear, is having got the memo about sustainable management, is that to be fully sustainable, maybe there's some things we couldn't afford if we actually took into account the total lifetime cost.
Yep.
And or the alternative that, well, we've got some bullets to bite, or we need a different model altogether. And you know, I can see some shiny lights around charitable trust myself as a means of getting external funding, which wouldn't be available to the district council.
Yeah. And interesting enough around the sustainability angle, that is something that is definitely becoming more and more of a concern. There's a lot of pools that the chemical use, the water consumption, if they're on gas boilers, they're trying to convert those to electric, but then you're using a huge amount of electric. So the feasibility study we're doing here in Mangawhai, I think, will be quite a useful document where we have required or requested them to look at that low electricity, low water use, which ultimately could reduce the impact environmentally, could be far more sustainable. So yeah, we're trying to, obviously a lot of the pools were built quite some time ago and there was no thought put into, you know, how much resource was used in building it in relation to steel and concrete and etc. And even how they were designed to be run, when now there's a lot more thought put into that to ensure that it's cost effective, but also environmentally friendly as well.
Thank you.
Can I just jump in here for a sec?
Sure.
So thanks, gentlemen. Look, I'm very mindful that the contract for running the Cody Coast pool is up 30 June next year. That's correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. So my question to you is around timing for this work, given that we are going to be doing pretty quickly. In fact, we've started the annual plan work for that next financial year already. And if we are required or need to get some decisions from the council in this space and then perhaps consult on them, then we'll need to do this side of Christmas. So with that knowledge, thoughts around timing? Yeah.
No thoughts around timing other than the fact that we know that we are going to be tight for timing. And I believe that that is part of the work that we'll be doing with the staff to actually determine, you know, when are the points in time that we need to have certain things in place to ensure that it can actually move. And I think we can also look at what Whangarei is doing in relation to, if we're choosing to do something similar to them, they will have a business case that will outline exactly what that process looks like and how long it takes to complete.
Okay, so maybe, Hayley, this is a question for you, and apologies for the total speed here. You know, there will be costs involved with business cases, that sort of thing. I don't think we've set anything aside in our LTP for this.
Business cases for.
Yeah, but I can miss it.
Yeah, so
Council.
I mean, the two feasibility studies are underway.
Yeah.
So, and then there's a meeting on Monday, tomorrow.
So those ones are okay. So I think that all the 6 district recommendations, I think we can address with what we're currently doing. It will be the regional one, which is the ownership of Jason's.
It's the business case, it's not.
Yeah, that's what we need to determine.
Okay, so we'll work through that with you. So I think, just for the council's benefit, this is a topic that we need to really get onto and address this side of Christmas in preparation for the annual plan. And, you know, whether or not there is funding set aside or whether or not we consult with the public on whatever option you decide, we need to do that work fairly quickly here. So that's essentially for the council's benefit, just so you know what we're at.
Okay, so you haven't finished your presentation?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's me.
So yeah, we're waiting for feedback from that to make further decisions down the track. So. Yeah.
So yeah, I think we'll work with the team and probably come back to a future briefing. She's doing fairly quickly. We just need to make sure we align it with our annual plan process and then start that conversation happening so that you have decision-making ability and power whilst we go through the annual plan process.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to welcome back Dale and Ben, are we?
Yeah, I think we'll get to the audio. Yeah, I could. He was on the phone.
Okay.
Over on.
See how we go today in the question.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. We'll resume our presentation. So we've gone away and looked at the option that was discussed, which was 5 councillors from 3 wards, 2 from Wairoa, 1 from Auckland, 2 from Mangawhai. If we don't make any boundary changes and we go to that arrangements, the Wairoa ward is compliant at -7.83%. Ultimatea is at +11.3%, so it's slightly outside of that plus or minus 10% range. And the Kawaka Mangawhai is at 2.16%, so that's fine as well. If we do wish to pursue this and make a boundary change to make the arrangements compliant, we'd have to move 73 people from Ultimatea into either of the wards.
Sorry, how many?
73.
Okay.
Good option.
Yeah, it's doable. There is one mesh block identified as potentially viable. It's on the eastern side of Otomatea. It could move into the Kawaka Mangawhai ward. It's got 100 people in it, just to the west of State Highway 1. So we could certainly produce a map and an option with that mesh block moving into Kawaka Mangawhai.
Thank you.
Councillor Larson?
It's a similar number of people, the current.
Change,
That's right. There's about 103 or something, wasn't it?
Yeah.
110.
110 versus 70 something.
3, yep, that's right.
Better. Yeah, thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor, sorry, if you don't mind, Councillor Collins is just trying to catch up with what you said because it's important this year.
Summarise that again.
Just real brief for Councillor Collins, sorry, and just, can I just clarify, the boundary change, it'd be the different boundary change from the perennial Otomatea boundary change in time, would be the other boundary to that.
Yes, just to the west of State Highway 1. Move that, sorry?
Mountain Road.
Oh, have you got that map?
Let's
Can't recall the exact road, but it's on the western side of the Otomatea ward. Eastern side. Eastern side, yeah. Okay, there we go. So there was 5 councillors from 3 wards, 2 from Wairoa, 1 from Otomatea, and 2 from Kawaka Mangawhai. It's marginally non-compliant. Otomatea ward, slightly too big. We'd have to move 73 people into either of the 2 other wards. And there is one mesh block that we've identified as potentially viable to do that.
100 people, so we could do that, yeah.
Okay.
So I think at this point, we've sort of landed on 2 options. One is that recommended option and another one is going down to 5 councillors.
Thank you.
Now what?
A steer, please.
A steer? What would you like us to do?
Can I just, sorry, before you do that, Mr Mayor, is it feasible that both options come to the council and they decide on the day?
I'd like that in principle.
But that,
Yes, me too.
that does create additional work.
Yeah, that's all right. We could just have,
Preparation for the documentation for public consultation. So just that,
we can have recommendations, either this or this, yeah.
Councillor?
Do we, we can only go to the community with 1? Cool.
In terms of the background information, we would be saying all the various options that we considered. So that would, whichever was the unsuccessful one of the 2, that would get some recognition in the information supplied as we go out for consultation.
Submissions could be made on that basis, yeah.
Councillor Larson?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah. So just to be clear, under this proposal, you would have slightly more people in the Otomatea ward by 73 people, but there would only be 1 councillor for the entire Otomatea ward.
Correct.
Running from north of Ruawai through to a bit closer to Kaiwaka.
Correct, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So just to clarify this clear direction here, so I believe, so we're going to present 2 options, either or for you, on the 4th council meeting. The agenda, you'll decide on the day. And the 2 options are the preferred as per the presentation, and then what has just been outlined to you just now with a slight boundary change to make it compliant. And we'll do the preparation and the background to try and make all the magic happen, whatever decisions you decide on the day.
In the interim, there's whatever to consider the complexities and what issues you might consider would come up as members. Yeah.
just with what comes back to us, will we get some analysis on the community of interest sort of situation there with that board getting bigger and just having one person to represent it, or is that?
It's getting smaller, isn't it?
Oda Mateo would be getting smaller.
Smaller by,
Slightly smaller.
slightly by 7.3, yeah. Yeah.
Not a lot different to now.
No.
I mean, we could certainly produce a detailed map showing you the. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm just talking to our comms staff at the same time, because obviously they're going to need to prep in the background for the consultation aspects of it as well. So that does make it quite difficult, actually. But we were hoping to bring the proposal doc to the next briefing as well, but we may not be able to do that. So what I'm saying to you here is if we bring the two options to you and you make a decision, we'll just have to get that proposal doc and get that ready to go and just push through and get it done. And that's just the way it's going to have to be to meet our statutory timeframe.
Okay.
There's no leeway after the next meeting on the 4th. The 6th, so that's the 4th, is it? Yeah.
And if anything changes, then, we'll go from there.
Yeah.
But I think we'll go with that.
I think we've explored every opportunity, haven't we? Every avenue.
I think we have. So let's go forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so next on our agenda is wastewater treatment plant capacity upgrade stage 1 status briefing on that, and we have Clint Cantrell, SCO Consulting, and they present that online, and Anna Nam is online today, I believe, to present this item in person as well. In person online, is that possible? No, it's
Well,
not.
yes, it is. He's in person online.
He's in person online. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We bring our presentation up, please. Whilst we're just bringing up the presentation, I might just do a little bit of a recap. Joining me today is Clint Cantrell. He is known to you. He's presented to council in the past. He is remote from Rarotonga, so I'm hoping that there's going to be no connection issues today. Mr. Mayor, just a bit of a recap. So we are talking about the Mangawhai Wastewater Treatment Plant capacity upgrade. Council approved in October last year. We set out a 5-stage program, and the council approved stages 1 and 2. And stages 1 were the optimisation of the plant, putting in a new unit called the indents, and we'll go through that in a bit of detail shortly. But also then doing concept design and consent development for the golf course and the Brown Road system. So the plant had a capacity of 3,000 connections, and to date we're sitting around 3,760 odd connections. And we knew that with the growth coming on, we were going to be presented with problems with capacity at the plant. So we looked far and wide, and my technical team, along with support from some water care staff, developed this concept of building an indent system at the front end of the treatment plant, and Clint will go through how the mechanics of all that work. But as a result of putting that in, we've increased the capacity of the plant by 500 connections. So that's a good news story. Just in terms of the financials, we purchased the unit from overseas, and it arrived earlier this year, and we engaged a local contractor to do the fit out. So the total budget set aside from what the council approved for this stage 1 was 1.195, and we brought the project in at 1.13, so below budget and within time. So again, that's a good outcome. What I might do, Mr. Mayor, is just hand over to Clint, and we'll take you through the technical aspects of the unit. And look, we'll be happy to take take questions as we go. We're just probably going to have to be guided a little bit because we can't see the room. So if that's all right, I'll hand over to Clint now, and we'll take you through.
Thank you, Anna. Yep.
Kia ora, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep. Loud and clear, Clint.
Okay, great. As Anand said, I'm dialing in from the remote islands of Tonga on a Starlink dish, so fingers crossed I'll get through this without a technical glitch. If we go to the next slide, please. So this is an overview of the Mongawai treatment plant. I won't go through every single detail, but at the entrance to the plant, the wastewater goes through a series of screens and grit removal basins, and then from there it enters two biological treatment tanks, which sort of have they're rectangular in shape and have a brown color. Most recently, Council built a third tank, which in this photo appears to be empty, but it acts as a peak flow storage basin, particularly during wet weather events when the flows are high. So in the biological tanks, the wastewater is treated, a lot of the contaminants are removed, and then the treated effluent is discharged into the tank that looks green on the surface. Don't worry, that green is perfectly normal. That's a duckweed matting, and that actually indicates that the effluent is of good quality and in good health. So we like duckweed. That is not algae. And then the other tank, circular tank, which is brown in color, is where the solids go to from the reactors, which we call the waste solids. And they're stored in that tank. They're dried out on a belt press, and then from there, they're trucked to a landfill. The treated effluent from the green tank then goes through a disinfection process, and then from there, it is pumped about 10 to 11 kilometers to the Brown Road irrigation farm for ultimate effluent disposal. So if we just go to the next slide, I'll explain where the indents fits in this puzzle. So this is really just a schematic of what I've already explained, where the raw wastewater comes in, it goes through screens, and then from there it goes to the biological reactors. It's then filtered, disinfected, and sent to Brown Farm. In the issue that we were dealing with when Anand explained the plant was sitting at 3,000 connection capacity, and we were able to lift it up to about 3,550. The main constraint in the plant was the ability for those biological reactors to retain the solids when they decant the treated effluent to the filters and the disinfection system. So when that process is happening and we're sending the treated effluent, we don't want the solids to come out of the tanks. However, under higher flows, because of the nature of the solids, the plant couldn't discharge the decant effluent as quickly enough without losing solids. And so that's what held the capacity back. If we go to the next slide, I'll show you where the indent system sits in. So this is a detailed review of one of the biological reactors where the treated wastewater goes in. It goes through a three-step process. Almost, you can think of it almost like a laundry machine where you've got, wash, rinse, and drain cycles. So in this case, the tank fills with the raw wastewater. It then aerates the water, and there are good biological bacteria in the tank that break the contaminants down and remove the things that we don't want to discharge to the environment. And through that process, when the tanks are done with that biological aeration process, the air is shut off and the water just sits in the tank, and it allows the solids to settle to the bottom of the tank. And then once that's done, we slowly decant the treated water off of the surface of the tank for filtration and disinfection. So the other part of the process is that the solids sitting at the bottom of the tank are then pumped off of the tanks. And we send some of those solids back into the biological process because we need to keep the good bacteria alive and colonized in the tanks. but the solids that we don't want to return to the reactors, we waste to that brown circular tank that I showed you earlier, where we dewater it and then send it to landfill. So if we go to the next slide. So this shows where we plugged the indent system in that Anand spoke about at the introduction. And in a minute, I'll explain how indents works. But the important thing is to see that we plug it in to receive the solids that are being pumped off the tank. And the indent system is designed to separate the good solids from the bad solids. And I'll explain how it does that. But what that does is indents basically takes the solids that have the better bacteria and are denser and easier to settle and sends that back to the reactor. And then it takes the lighter, fluffier solids that don't settle very well at all, and it sends that to the waste tank. So if we go to the next slide. So this is what the indent system looks like. It looks like a rather complicated mechanical system. The analogy I use is in the gold mining industry. We can use what are called hydrocyclones, and you send the water that has the light gold flakes in it, and you use centripetal force. So the water goes into the top and it spins down to the bottom, and anything heavy in that gets separated and drawn off of the bottom, and then the lighter stuff comes off of the top. So on that right-hand image, you'll see that spiral shape. So that's the wastewater flowing and going through a vortex procedure. And through that, the heavier solids are collected at the bottom and sent back to the reactors, and the lighter solids rise to the top. They're taken off of the top of those cyclones and sent through for wasting. So the beauty of this system is it's just a pure basic mechanical system that uses one of the most basic physics, centripetal force. And we like that in wastewater treatment because when you can keep things simple, it makes it a lot easier to operate. So if we go to the next slide. So these are just photos of the team on site at Mangawhai installing the indent system. So our consulting experts in wastewater treatment were on site during the entire time of installation and commissioning. So the image on the left shows the indents unit, and that my daughter is my engineering business partner. She's in the front part of the photo, and then one of our consulting engineering experts is in the background. But it kind of gives you a sense of scale that the device is not that much bigger than a couple of human beings. So it's not huge. The other item that we needed to upgrade in the plant were the pumps that pump that the solids off of the bottom of the tanks, because the indent system needs quite a considerable amount of pressure to operate correctly. And so we put in new pumps that provide that higher pressure. And the image on the right is KDC's SCADA system consultant who programs the treatment plant controls, and then one of our engineering experts. And so they were working together to write the control system that now operates the indent system. So if we go to the next slide. So when the team commissioned the indent system, they took samples of the solids from the reactor tanks, and then also solids coming off of the indent system to make sure it was doing what we wanted. So the cylinder or the beaker on the left shows what the raw solids look like before it gets to the indents. The one in the middle is what the indents is sending back to the reactor. So that's the good solids that we want. And the cylinder on the right is the lighter, fluffier solids that the indent system is wasting and sending to landfill. Now, some of you have been to the treatment plant. Anand's been there, and when we were there, we took those cylinders, and if you give the one in the middle a bit of a shake, it doesn't really disturb the solids very much because it's the heavy, dense stuff that we want. However, if you shake the one on the right, the solids immediately lift up, and it takes hours and hours and hours before they settle down. So that's really just kind of a physical test to say the indents is doing what we had designed it to do. If we go to the next slide.
Can I just ask a question at that point?
Yeah.
From my understanding, please, it's Mark Vincent here. I am interested in that point of view, in that by doing a separation out, you're not going to be clogging up the filters at the next stage, and also the sterilisation of the effluent outfall is going to be more effective too, yes?
Yeah, so look, that's a fantastic question. You're well on your way to being a process engineer. So that's a very good point. Indents actually reduces the risk of exactly that happening. So before we installed indents, we had cases where the solids did escape into those sand filters and blocked the UV light. And that's why we had to pull back on the flows and the capacity of the plant to stop that from happening. So with that center cylinder now, that material settles very well and stays in those reactor tanks when you decant the tanks to the filters in the UV disinfection system. So because of that, we've been carefully monitoring any kind of solids residual in the flow going to the filters in the UV since indents has been installed, and it's plummeted to almost nothing. And that's even when we run the plant harder. So your question really gets to the heart of the purpose of the indent system, is to stop that from happening. And again, we're doing that by retaining the solids that settle better in the tanks, and we're getting rid of the light, fluffy solids that do tend to escape when those tanks go into the decant mode and drain the treated water from the top. Because that stuff on the right, if you get any kind of disturbance in the tank at all, they rise straight to the top and go out into the filters in the disinfection system. So hopefully that answered your question.
It does answer my question, but if you like that question, how about this one? So what is then the impact on the quality of the disposal at Brown Road?
Yeah, another.
Okay.
Yeah, look, another question, and I'm almost suspicious that you are in fact a process engineer. Yeah, that's a great question. So we have observed that it's increased the amount of solids that we are wasting and need to dewater and send to the landfill. But the benchmark is that the solids that the plant are producing now is what we would expect a plant of that nature to produce. In the next round of upgrades to the Mangawhai treatment plant, we will be looking to add an additional filter press that works to dewater the solids. So instead of maybe 1 or 2 truckloads of solids to the landfill per week from Mangawhai, we're now at about 4 truckloads per week. So it has gone up, but to be honest with you, that's a fairly low solids disposal loading for a plant of this nature, but more or less what we would expect. The only other thing I'll mention that's quite interesting, and we call this the icing on the cake, is the solids in that center beaker. Not only are they denser, but they contain a higher density of the bacteria that we want to keep in the reactor tanks. And because of that, we've actually not just seen the solid situation improve dramatically, the plant is actually operating much better in terms of things like nitrogen and phosphorus levels in the treated effluent. And I will mention towards the very end, we went through an optimization process on the treatment plant prior to installing indents, and that also had quite a dramatic effect on the performance of the treatment plant. And hopefully that answered your second question.
That does, thank you, but I'll pass on the cake,
If we go to the next slide.
Just before that goes, another question here from Ashnaia.
Thank you. My question, actually, a couple of questions, and I thought it's a good way to ask here. I actually saw the indent system in Auckland and also here. So my question is related to two things. And I like the fact you mentioned centrifugal and not centripetal, which I understand in the library in Australia. So how about if we put another indents? Would it increase the capacity of how many consents we can? Because then will be more solid going to the landfill. Is it possible? That's the first question.
Sorry, if you could just repeat the question. I didn't quite hear the first part of it.
Okay, so my question is, we also have another holding tank, I think number 3, which was not being used. So how about we put another indents for a couple of $1 million? Would it take away the need to have any extension to Brown Farm?
Well, yes. So again, very good question. So that third tank is actually being used as a peak flow storage tank, if you like. So, but in the next round of upgrades, the plan is to convert that third tank into a third biological reactor and also to put an indent system on that. And that round of upgrades will take the plant capacity from 3,550 connections to over 5,000 connections, which is good news for council in that you're leveraging the assets that you've already invested in and you're not sort of rebuilding a new treatment plant, if you like. On the effluent disposal side, Brown Farm becomes the next sort of point of capacity in terms of the irrigation system and effluent. But in parallel now, we're working on the assessment of sending some portion of treated effluent to the golf course for irrigation there. What we don't know yet is what the golf course's capacity will be to take effluent on an annual basis, and our consultants will be coming back to us with answers on that before Christmas. But based on that work, we will understand what the future of Brown Farm will need to be. And it could be anything from maybe we need to send 10% of the flow there in winter period when it's really wet, to, you know, on the extreme end, there could be a case where the golf course could more or less take everything, and, you know, we could ultimately look to decommission Brown Farm, but we won't know the answer to those questions until the consultants finish their ongoing studies.
Okay, thank you for that. I look forward to that comparison in terms of how much capacity upgrade after the second indents on Brown Farm and the need to have the link to golf course required or not. Thank you.
Okay, sure. If there's no other questions, okay, so the next slide. Look, this is a bit of a complicated slide, but I'll try to simplify it a little bit. These are measurements that we take of the ability of the solids to settle in the reactors. And there's a particular parameter, the green triangles, which is called the sludge volume index, or SVI. And that's a method where we put solids in a beaker and allow them to settle. And we time that. And based on the speed that the solids settle, we measure how well they're settling, if you like. So when we first started working on the Mongawai treatment plant, that SVI number was sitting between 200 to 300, sometimes more than 300. And that's very, very high, and that's not good. So you don't want that number to be high. You want it to be low. So the lower the SVI, the better the solids are settling. Now, the Mangere treatment plant that Watercare operates in Auckland had the exact same problem. Their SVIs were at around 200 to 300, and that's why they've put in indents as well. So the good news is we installed the indent system in early April. You can see the date as that black vertical line. And what we notice is that the SVI is dropped dramatically. The latest data, which I literally got today and haven't been able to put on the plot, we're sitting at about 80 now on SVI, and that's the target that we were aiming for. So that's a very good number for the plant, and it means that we're getting excellent quality solids and settling happen. So as Anand mentioned earlier, the plant is performing extremely well, and the indents has done exactly what we wanted to. It did take a bit of time to do this performance testing because you have to go through several sludge cycles before the plant gets through that process of getting rid of the bad solids and keeping the good ones. And so it usually takes 3 to 4 months. But we're at that point now, and we're absolutely right on the target that we were aiming for. And then I think I just have one more slide. Before we installed indents, we went through a process of optimizing the treatment plant. And we did that by adjusting some of the control settings and how air is put into the reactors and a few other tweaks. And that was done in late 2023. And we did detailed sampling on the effluent quality. And we saw a dramatic improvement around things like nitrogen and phosphorus. So before we started optimization, phosphorus, which the orange squares, was almost sort of around 10. Sometimes it went up over 12 milligrams per liter. The data since we've optimized, and the red dashed line shows where indents went online. So the phosphorus coming out of the treatment plant is now less than 1, which is outstanding. And nitrogen is averaging less than 5. So in the world of wastewater treatment plant, we benchmark plants in a lot of cases based on the phosphorus and nitrogen levels. And I can tell you now that the Mongawai treatment plant is operating in what I would refer to as best in class of treatment plants like its kind across New Zealand. So if they gave out awards for well operating treatment plants, KDC would certainly have a trophy on their wall for this. I think that's the last slide, and I'm more than happy to take any questions. And I'm sure, I've kind of verbally said the conclusions. Anand mentioned a few. So again, we're at over 3,500 connections with indents. The next upgrades will take us over 5,000. In parallel, we'll look at what the golf course can do for effluent irrigation. As Anand said, this project was delivered ahead of schedule and under budget, which is pretty rare these days in the world of infrastructure. The performance testing shows extremely positive results. In fact, the nerdy engineers like myself are quite excited about presenting a paper at the wastewater conferences because this will draw a lot of good attention. And then the indent system will probably continue to enhance even a little bit more as we carry on for the next few months, and we will continue to monitor. And then at the last point, with the upgrades, we will be at around 5,500 connections and sending high quality effluent to the golf course for irrigation use. Anand, if it's okay, I'll hand it back to you or take any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Clint. Very well presented slide deck. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So we are got a number of work streams underway. As you're aware, we've got some challenges at Brown Road, and my team are currently working through those issues. And some stage in the near term, we will be briefing council on issues related to Brown Road and what our options potentially are moving forward. At the same time, simultaneously, we've got a team working at the golf course. They have been working there for some time. We are now getting down to the more technical aspects of how much water can we send to the golf course, and what area of the golf course do we need to accommodate that in the short term, medium term, and then obviously the longer term. We will be looking to still retain Brown Road. We do need some redundancy built into the system, but ideally my desire would be is that the primary disposal field is the golf course. I am talking to the golf course. I will be attending the board meeting end of this month, just to keep them socialised and briefed on our timeframe. I know that the golf club are also looking to do some contouring work in the area that we are looking to do the subsurface irrigation. So I just wanted to make sure that our windows of construction are aligned. It may well mean that we may need to bring forward some aspects of our work to align with their work, but that's the conversation that I'm continuing to have with the golf club. We are looking to enter into a memorandum of understanding also with the golf club, so that as parties move and are no longer on the project, the surviving document will tell the story. So that's another piece of work that we're working on. So look, Mr. Mayor, that concludes our presentation. We're happy to take any further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have just one question to probably both of you. Having seen the plant in Auckland, they have an extensive arrangement to get rid of the odor or the foul smell of the water before it goes to disposal. So when we are looking at a prestigious golf course, how are we going to get rid of the smell?
Go ahead, Anand. I'll go first, Clint, then you chip in. So our process engineer, Councillor Vincent, raised a good point around the quality of the water going to the plant. Sorry, the brown.
It's not Vincent. It's
No, he's referring to what Mark said earlier, Ash. I'm sure.
Yeah. So the quality of the water leaving our plant is to a high standard. The issue we have at Brown Road, and it's not odorous, so we're not getting any odour at the plant other than when we have some peak demand and we have some hydrogen sulfide issues, but we've also resolved that within the network. But the water quality leaving the plant is of a high standard, and we're not seeing any odour related to the treated water quality. The odour that we are presented with at the Brown Road, the water enters a pond and the pond gets contaminated with birds and ducks. But we also have some issues with the fact that the ground has been saturated with treated effluent, and we potentially are getting some hydrogen sulfide drawn off from the farm as well. So look, I will be presenting to the council the aspects of Brown Road at another briefing. If we're sending treated water, we will be looking to do one or two things. Improve the quality of the water to what they call Class A, and we have talked about Class A in various presentations with council, and that just enhances the quality of the water. And so the work we're now doing at the golf club is how much water can we actually get to the plant. So odour won't be an issue because we are looking at one subsurface irrigation, but to the quality of the water leaving the plant, as Clint outlined in his last couple of graphs, is of a high standard. I'll just hand over to Clint now to see if he wants to add anything to that.
Look, Anand, you covered most of it. Just very briefly, when you look at the Mangere treatment plant that Watercare operates, that's a very different beast, if you like, and that's in particular how they process the sludge that comes off of the plant. So they have these huge, sort of funny-shaped concrete chambers that they go through what's called anaerobic digestion process, and that produces a huge amount of gas, methanes, and what we call mercaptans that are extremely odorous. Whereas the Mangawai treatment plant has a much simpler sludge handling process. And as Anand said, I've been on site for both treatment plants, and the Mongawai treatment plant, the odor levels are extremely low compared to what I've experienced at plants like Mangere. And as Anand said, the issue to do with odor generation at Brown Farm is more to do with the wetness of the irrigation paddocks and organic material that's coming into that large waterway through things like waterfowl. But we are working through a process there to address that. But the effluent going to the golf course will be handled very, very differently to mitigate any sort of odor risk.
Thank you.
I'd just like to concur with my colleagues on that.
Hey, thank you. I'll wrap this up. But thank you, Clint and Anand. I must say, when councillors and myself attended a viewing of the indent system, I was super impressed with how it works in terms of its size. And, you know, the result, they had to hold me back because I wanted to drink some at the end of it, but I was told it had too much nitrogen, so I was advised not to drink it, but it certainly is a high quality product coming out of the end of there now. And I want to congratulate you guys for delivering that, particularly delivering it under time and under budget, which is actually a little bit of a rarity nowadays, given the pressures out there for supply of materials, et cetera, So thank you very much for that presentation. It's appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on. Resource Management Act delegations. Catherine Overwater will present this item online. We have another person online. Yes.
Catherine. You there?
Yep. Morning.
Hello, Catherine.
Are we ready to go?
You want me to, I'll drive it for you.
All right, thank you. Good morning, elected members and your worship. So I'm just here to present on the Resource Management Act delegations. So you've probably heard from Shireen in terms of other delegations that are being reviewed. So myself and Lloyd have been across the resource management delegations for council. It's a pretty short and sweet report, but primarily the key things to bear in mind here is that the RMA delegations cannot be sub-delegated, as stated in section 34A. The delegations are made under the Act in Schedule 1. So Schedule 1, for those that forget, is the preparation of plan changes and review of policy statement and plans. We have reviewed and found, well, there's a whole range of issues, I guess, with what we've got currently, and really whether they were fit for purpose. So we've gone through all of them to work out whether they were a duty, a function, or a power, and really tidied those up where they were duties or functions where we don't have much discretion to do anything. So those are things we have to do as council anyway. So we've also updated the delegations to reflect the current position titles as well. So next slide, which should have the key changes there. So there's been no change to about 30 delegations. We've got minor amendments to 35 of them. 62 have been combined, split or slightly expanded to reduce the delegations there. And we've got 42 have been revoked. So those will be the ones that are really just duties or functions that we didn't need to have delegation for. There are 2 proposed new delegations. So in attachment A, just for your reference, that's section 38 and section 333 there, as well as section, what's the one for 332, which is for warrants. So that's the new CE delegations there to appoint enforcement officers.
one new largely administrative delegation, which is really for the signing off the post-approval certificates that Dina currently does here at council, and then delegations to hearing commissioners where appropriate. Next slide. There another slide? Oh, no, that's it. Yep. So really nothing kind of too major that comes out of it, but are there any questions on attachment A or any of the process that perhaps we've followed? And I think Lloyd's in the room to answer any questions on the consenting delegations there, if you have any.
I'll have a question.
Councillor Nair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in summary of all these delegation changes, amendments and whatnot, does it make CE job easier? Any easier with this amendment of RMA or any, if I balance the thing, these RMA changes, are they helping you or are they making it difficult to perform?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So they're not making it difficult. Sorry, Catherine.
Yep, no, that's all good.
It's just part of our regular, like the review that you've asked us to do in the delegations. It just makes it tidier and so gives us clarity about what the delegation.
Easier, I would say. Thank you.
Easy, Phil.
Good.
Okay. Any further question? Are we going to break for lunch?
Or we can finish it.
We can push through, Mr. Mayor, if you want it. It's up to you. We've got a public excluded workshop.
Still ahead of time.
Yeah, we're still here to time.
Just finish it.
Leave at what time?
12:30.
Are we closing the opening briefing?
Thanks, Catherine.
Thanks, guys.
Closing the open briefing. Yep, closing the open.
Close.
Yep. And what do you want to do, Mr. Mayor?
Let's push on then. Let's make it happen.
Okay.
One item.
Do we have our presenter for the next item?
All right, I'm just going to stop the live stream. Just give me 1 sec.
Get it in here.
Linus and George, isn't it?
Do I need some music?